Hello everybody. I would be discussing this module on behalf of Mr. Deepak Raju. The module that we would be understanding today is on the consensus based decision making process in the WTO and the strengths and limitations of the same. For this, we would be understanding, besides from the consensus based decision making process in the WTO, we would also be understanding the proposals for reform and the accession and withdrawal process to the WTO. For this, we would understand the decision making process in the WTO, the pros and cons of the decision making process, and the potential for reform in these. The WTO, as we know, is established by an international treaty, namely the Marrakesh Agreement, and all the obligations that parties undertake in the WTO are treaty obligations. It is well established in international law that no state can be bound to a treaty obligation without its consent. This position emerges from international law's axiomatic acceptance of sovereign equality of states. States being sovereign and equal, no sovereign or group of sovereigns can bind together sovereign or another group of sovereigns to treaty obligation without the latter's consent. The emphasis on consent carries with it inherent obligation where a treaty has near universal membership. An absolute rule of consent would translate in such a setting to a rule of consensus for making any decision that would increase the obligations or diminish the rights of treaty parties. Such consensus is often difficult to attain in an organization like WTO, where a large number of members have widely different interests. Some international organizations have found solutions to this problem in rules of decision making other than consensus, namely majority voting, special majorities, voting within specialized organizations with limited membership, or even negative consensus on some limited matters. This chapter examines the decision making process within the WTO and its various committees and subcommittees. As will be discussed below, most of the important decisions in the WTO, especially those enhancing or diminishing the rights and obligations under various WTO agreements, can be understood only by consensus. Further, we will discuss some proposals for potential reform of this process. Additionally, the mechanisms for acceding to the WTO as well as the provisions governing exit from the WTO will be considered below. Now we would understand the decision making in the WTO as an overview of the same. As discussed in the previous chapter, the GATT 1947 did not establish an international organization. However, it provided for joint action by contracting parties in Article 25, which would be the first semblance of an organizational structure for matters of international trade. This nascent organizational structure came with its own rules on decision making. Representatives of contracting parties shall meet from time to time for the purpose of giving effect to those provisions of this agreement which involve joint action and generally with a view to facilitating the operation and furthering the objectives of this agreement. Wherever reference is made in this agreement to the contracting parties acting jointly, they are designated as contracting parties in capital letters. Each contracting party shall be entitled to have one vote at all the meetings of the contracting parties. Out here, as we can see, the words contracting parties has been mentioned in complete capital letters. Whenever the word contracting parties has been mentioned in completely capital letters, it means the GATT and all the members together. However, when contracting parties is written in small letters, it means that an individual contracting party or the member of the GATT. Hence, out here, when contracting parties is been written in capital letters together, it means that each contracting party which is in small letters, that means every member of the GATT, shall be entitled to have one vote at all meetings of the contracting parties, which is in capital letters, which means all the members of the GATT as a whole. Clause 4 states that, except as otherwise provided for in this agreement, decision of the contracting parties, again in capitals, that means the GATT as a whole, shall be taken by a majority of the votes cast. In exceptional circumstances not elsewhere provided for in this agreement, the contracting party in capital, that means all the members of the GATT, may waive an obligation imposed upon a contracting party in small letters, which means upon a single member of the GATT by this agreement, provided that any such decision shall be approved by a two-thirds majority of the votes cast, and such a majority shall comprise more than half of the contracting parties. The contracting parties, or in other words the GATT as a whole, may also by such a vote 1. Define such categories of exceptional circumstances to which other voting requirements shall apply for the waiver of obligations, and 2. Prescribe such criteria as may be necessary for the application of this paragraph. Therefore, the GATT 1947 provided by the rule of majority as the default rule for decision making by the contracting parties, as stated in the provision quoted above. This expression in block letters denotes contracting parties acting jointly. A two-third majority was required for 1. Waiving obligations under the GATT, 2. Altering the voting rules for decisions on waiver of obligations, and 3. Prescribing criteria for the application of the provisions on waiver of obligations. Despite the GATT establishing voting as a mode of decision making over a period of time, perhaps with a view to attract new members to accede, GATT contracting parties de facto adopted a system of consensus. This system of consensus was so well entrenched in the practice of contracting parties that the Marrakesh Agreement states, the WTO shall continue the practice of decision making by consensus followed under GATT 1947, even though the text of GATT still has not been modified to reflect that practice. This therefore reflects that the WTO shall continue the practice of decision making by consensus followed under the GATT 1947, except as otherwise provided, where a decision cannot be arrived by consensus, the matter at issue shall be decided by voting. At meetings of the Ministerial Conference and the General Council, each member of the WTO shall have one vote. Where the European communities exercise their right to vote, they shall have a number of votes equal to the number of their member states. And 2, which are members of the WTO. Decision of the Ministerial Conference and the General Council shall be taken by a majority of the votes cast unless otherwise provided in this agreement or in the relevant multilateral trade agreements. The Ministerial Conference and the General Council shall have the exclusive authority to adopt interpretations of this agreement and of the multilateral trade agreements. In the case of an interpretation of a multilateral trade agreement in Annex 1, they shall exercise their authority on the basis of a recommendation by the Council overseeing the functioning of that agreement. The decision to adopt an interpretation shall be taken by a 3/4 majority of the members. Also, in exceptional circumstances, the Ministerial Conference may decide to waive an obligation imposed on a member by this agreement or any of the multilateral trade agreements, provided that any such decision shall be taken by 3/4 of the members unless otherwise provided for in this paragraph. Therefore, Article 9 of the Marrakesh Agreement lays down elaborate decision making process of the WTO. As stated above, it calls upon the members to continue the practice of consensus decision making as a first step. Thereafter, it proceeds to create the possibility for voting on the basis of one vote per member where consensus cannot be reached. In such cases, simple majority is the default rule unless otherwise specified. Special majorities of 2/3 and 3/4 are prescribed for interpretations of provisions, amendments of provisions or waiver of obligations. However, the WTO has, like the GATT, attempted to adopt decisions through consensus and resort to formal voting has been rare. This has often meant that WTO membership has been unable to adopt decisions on several matters, particularly on controversial ones, for extended periods. In the next few slides, we explore some possible alternatives to this process. An exception to the one vote per member rule is that if the European Union votes as a member, its vote counts as equal to the number of members that the EU has who are also members of the WTO. Under such circumstances, the EU members who are also WTO members cannot vote separately. The proposals of reform would be discussed now. For voting, legally, the option of voting is already available to the WTO membership. However, given the centrality of the commercial interests affected by WTO decisions, it is unlikely that the membership will, generally speaking, leave decisions to majority voting. Developing country members have been particularly vocal against having a voting based on decision-making system. While a number of developing countries and least developed countries in the WTO exceeds the number of developed country members, the reluctance of developing country members to yield the majority voting has been seen against the background of various political and economic disputes that continue to divide developing countries from acting as a united front in the international organizations. In the late 1960s and 70s, the developing countries actively participated in the United Nations General Assembly, often coordinating their positions. However, the shared point of view that developing countries could develop in the General Assembly, given the nature of issues under consideration, is missing on the trade front, given the inherently diverse nature of interests pursued in the trade fora. On the other hand, developed countries have developed coordinated strategies on several issues. This is best exemplified by the fact that the European Union is a member of the WTO in its own capacity, coordinating all its members in their voting positions. Despite these concerns, the membership should seriously consider allowing voting with simple or special majority, at least on a predefined set of issues. Now discussing the pros and cons of plurilateralism. In some cases where consensus was impossible, WTO members have proceeded to conclude plurilateral arrangements applying among some but not all members of the WTO. The Agreement on Trade in Civil Aircraft, to which 32 WTO members are parties, and Agreement on Government Procurement, which has 28 members, are current examples of this. Several of WTO's current multilateral agreements started out as plurilateral agreements and gained multilateral character only after the Tokyo round. One solution to the limitation of consensus rule could be that those members who are interested in undertaking additional commitments could conclude plurilateral agreements inter se, which may or may not evolve into multilateral agreements subsequently. However, this would undermine one of the cardinal principles of the WTO framework, the single undertaking. Currently, any member acceding to the WTO has to accept all the multilateral agreements and cannot pick and choose that it prefers. This has been hailed as one of the main achievements of the WTO, as it eliminates the need to negotiate each agreement specifically with an acceding member. Ushering in plurilateralism may pose serious threats to the idea of a single undertaking. Also, in an environment encouraging plurilateralism, members may compromise their efforts at arriving at consensus and opt for an easier route, slowly undermining the multilateral character of the WTO. Now we would discuss the proposals for reform for accession to and the withdrawal from the WTO. In case of the United Nations, both conditions for accession and the possibility of exiting the organization have been subjects of intense debates, the former leading to the admissions advisory opinion in the year 1948 and the latter resulting in ambiguities over the status of Indonesia when it announced its intention to exit the United Nations. In case of the WTO, elaborate provisions of the Marrakesh Agreement govern both accession and withdrawal. Article 12 on accession states that any state or separate customs territory possessing full autonomy in the conduct of its external commercial relations and of other matters provided for in this agreement and the multilateral trade agreements may accede to this agreement on terms to be agreed between it and the WTO. Such accession shall apply to this agreement and the multilateral trade agreements annexed thereto. Clause 2 states that decisions on accession shall be taken by the Ministerial Conference. The Ministerial Conference shall approve the agreement on the terms of accession by a two-thirds majority of the members of the WTO. Accession to a plurilateral trade agreement shall be governed by the provisions of that agreement. The eligibility to accede to the WTO extends not merely to states but also to separate customs territory possessing full autonomy in the conduct of its external commercial relations and of the other matters provided for in the Marrakesh Agreement and the multilateral trade agreements. Therefore, Hong Kong and Macau, while parts of the State People's Republic of China, have separate memberships in the WTO. Taiwan, under the name Chinese Taipei, is a member despite its statehood being a heavily debated topic in international law. European Union is a member in addition to the membership of its constituent states. Currently, there are 160 members in the WTO. Starting out with 23 original signatories to the GATT in 1947, the membership of most of these members is the result of elaborate negotiations and consequent accession. It is widely accepted that Article 4 of the Montevideo Convention on Rights and Obligations of States lays down the criteria for statehood in international law. However, when European Union exercises its vote, the member states cannot vote. The vote of European Union has the value equivalent to the member of EU members who are also WTO members. The detailed procedure for accession is laid down in the WTO document WT/ACC/1 titled Accession to the WTO Procedures for Negotiations under Article 12, prepared by the WTO Secretariat in the year 1995. Though the Secretariat's draft of this document was considered by the members and revised according to their inputs during multilateral consultations, it was decided by the membership that the document would not be submitted to the Ministerial Conference or General Council for formal endorsement. Therefore, this document serves as a practical roadmap but not as a legally binding instrument. The process of accession begins with a request for membership from an interested and eligible state or customs territory. The General Council, by a decision, establishes a working party to consider the request. The working party prepares a report on the foreign trade regime of the applicant provides the necessary documents and answers questions raised by existing members. After this stage, which the WTO calls for the fact-finding stage, the WTO and the applicant proceed to the negotiation stage. Therefore, negotiations are undertaken multilaterally, bilaterally or plurilaterally depending on the issue under consideration. At the end of this phase, the working party submits a report to the General Council along with the draft protocol of accession and the draft schedules of commitment in goods and services. This terminates the mandate of the working party. If the General Council or the Ministerial Conference accepts the report of the working party and the terms of accession, it is open for the applicant to announce its acceptance of the terms through signature or otherwise. Hence, the applicant has conveyed its acceptance. The WTO notifies the acceptance of the applicant. The membership commences in 30 days from the date of such notification. Withdrawal from the WTO is governed by Article 15 Clause 1 of the Marrakesh Agreement. Hence, any member may withdraw from this agreement. Such withdrawal shall apply both to this agreement and the multilateral trade agreements and shall take effect upon the expiration of 6 months from the date on which written notice of withdrawal is received by the Director General of the WTO. This provision allows members to withdraw from the WTO by simply giving a written notice to the Director General. The withdrawal takes effect in 15 days. Unlike the provision on accession, this provision on withdrawal is yet to be tested since no member has ever issued a notice of withdrawal under Article 15. From this, we have understood various concepts of consensus-based decision-making in the WTO. We have understood the pros and cons of the WTO along with the proposals for reform in the WTO. Hence, we have discussed that decision-making is taken by joint action of contracting parties. We have understood few significant aspects of this chapter. We have primarily understood that whenever contracting parties is written in the word capitals, it means the contracting parties by joint action or all the members of the WTO. In other words, when contracting parties is written in small letters, it means each particular member of the WTO. We have understood that the WTO is established by an international treaty, namely the Marrakesh Agreement, and all the obligations that the parties undertake in the WTO are treaty obligations. For this, we have seen certain relevant aspects of the WTO decision-making process. We have seen that this involves various committees and subcommittees. The decision-making process of the WTO is explained in Article 25 of the GATT as we saw. We have seen that for this purpose, the representatives of all the contracting parties should meet from time to time for the purpose of giving effect to these provisions for the purpose of joint action. We saw again that each contracting party has one vote at all the meetings. We also understood that this implies that because the European Union has as many votes as the number of members, then we also understood that the decisions as per Article 25 are undertaken as per 2/3 majority of the votes cast. In addition, despite the GATT establishing voting as a mode of decision making over a period of time, with a view to attract new members, the GATT contracting parties de facto adopt a system of consensus. For this, we understood that as per the Marrakesh Agreement, the WTO shall continue the practice of decision making by consensus followed under the GATT 1947. The term consensus connotes the lack of any negative votes or not voting in the affirmative by the entire membership. Article 9 of the Marrakesh Agreement also lays down the elaborate decision-making rules for the WTO. Hence, for this, it calls upon the practice of consensus decision-making as a first step. We have seen the various proposals for reform. We discussed the proposals for reform for voting and for plurilateralism. We saw that the option of voting is already available to the WTO membership. However, given the centrality of the commercial interests affected by WTO decisions, it is unlikely that any member would leave decisions to majority voting. While a number of developing countries and least developed countries in the WTO exceed the number of developed country members, the reluctance of developing country members to yield to majority voting has been seen against this background of various political and economic disputes that continue to divide developing countries from acting as a united front in the international organizations. We also further saw for this purpose that despite these concerns, the membership should seriously consider allowing voting with simple or special majority on at least a predefined set of issues. As far as plurilateralism is concerned, we saw that in some cases where consensus was impossible, WTO members have proceeded to conclude plurilateral agreements applying amongst some but not all members of the WTO. The Agreement on Trade in Civil Aircraft and the Agreement on Civil Procurement are some examples of these. One solution to the limitations of the consensus rule could be that those members who are interested in undertaking additional commitments could conclude plurilateral agreements inter se, which may or may not evolve into multilateral agreements subsequently. However, we also understood that this would undermine one of the cardinal principles of the WTO framework, that is, of the single undertaking. Lastly, we understood the process of accession to and withdrawal from the WTO. We saw that in the case of United Nations, both conditions of accession and the possibility of exiting the organization have been subjects of intense debates. In case of the WTO, nevertheless, elaborate provisions of the Marrakesh Agreement govern both accession and withdrawal. We saw that Article 12 governs accession and the eligibility to accede to the WTO extends not merely to states but also to separate customs territory possessing full autonomy in the conduct of its external commercial relations and of the other matters provided for in the Marrakesh Agreement and the multilateral trade agreements. We saw that currently, while there are 160 members in the WTO, the membership of most of these members is a result of elaborate negotiation and subsequent accessions. With this, we have discussed various parts of consensus-based decision making in the WTO. Thank you very much.